The big news, I think, right now is, well, we finished last week because Mike Brown in the first week of training camp kind of said something interesting. He was like, yeah, I think he was asked about the starting lineup, and he was like, I'm going to give the same starting group from last year the first crack at it. But if I need to make a change, I'll make a change. And there was really no indication that anything was going to happen right away, but it sparked up a conversation with us. We closed it out. We were like, maybe Keegan Murray plays himself out, maybe Harrison Barnes. In hindsight, none of those really make a lot of sense. And the one that did make sense that we did kind of touch upon last kind of seems like it could materialize. Chris Duarte started over Kevin Huerter. Now, obviously, Mike Brown has noted that he wants to experiment with different groups and see how things are. And obviously, Duarte played really well against the Lakers. After the first few minutes where he continued looking lost, but then there was a timeout and he came out, played great defense for the rest of the game, went perfect from the field, and then got to start with the starting lineup on Sunday against the Warriors. Looked really good again, and I think the Kings have started each of their preseason games with their starting lineups very well, but I think particularly against Golden State, they were really, really good. So as much as Mike Brown wants to say that it's just experimenting, there is a huge argument to make that Chris Duarte should start. Maybe that's not through and through perfect, but I think what is through and through perfect is that Duarte is a better two-way player. He's clearly a better defender.
Yeah.
And, Kevin Huerter is a talented weak side defender. He made strides in that, was kind of like a model citizen in that regard for Mike Brown, kind of coming over and squeezing from the weak side, coming up with steals and interceptions and stuff like that. But on ball, he's not quick on his feet. He doesn't really play with his chest a whole lot. He's not super physical. And, in terms of defending the pick and roll and the dribble handoff, which the Kings were apparently worst at last season, bottom of the league, Kevin Huerter, as the two guard, Fox is a good defender, Mm-hmm. Kevin Huerter's not.
No.
And Mike Brown was talking, about, because when he announced that Duarte was going to start on Sunday, obviously that's not an indication if that's going to be happening on opening night, but it does raise the question of what does Huerter have to do to secure that spot? And Mike Brown was very careful about not singling out Huerter, but very clearly in talking about this, Herter's kind of the main culprit, because think about the other guard. You can maybe throw Malik Monk in there, but think about the other guards like Fox and Davion, great defenders and whatnot. But he was talking about how when a lot of times guys don't get physical or skinny up, as he put it, to go through the screen. They go around and all of a sudden they're chasing. Sabonis has to step up, and now you're playing 4-on-5 basketball. And you'd see that a lot. You'd see the Kings scramble, and you'd hear Katie Christensen go, "That's a really good scramble." And it's they shouldn't be scrambling. Yeah. They can't scramble every other possession defensively. That's not sustainable at all. I know that that's her job. I get that, but it's just no, you can't be doing that. And talking about Davion and Fox, Mike Brown put Duarte in the same group as them. He said that Fox, Davion, and Duarte have been so good at playing physically, at getting through screens and getting up into the ball with their chest and defending the pick and roll and the DHO. And basically, outside of that first preseason game and the first part of that Lakers game, he's looked awesome. It's so clear. So many instances where he looked awesome. He made Klay Thompson, I think Klay hit a tough shot over him, but he forced 3 misses on Klay, made him work. And I think when Kevin Huerter came in midway through the first quarter for him and took Klay, I think he fouled him on his first defensive possession. And Mike Brown said after the game that he wasn't too worried about Huerter's fouls, because I think he had 3 early fouls. He said they were products of good effort. But yeah, it's on full display that Chris Duarte is a way better defender than Kevin Huerter. He's a way better two-way player. And right now, he's shooting better than Kevin Huerter. Kevin Huerter's shooting 18% in the preseason right now.
Yeah.
I think if I have it here, he's shooting 3 of 16, while Duarte is 4 of 10. So that's 18% versus 40%. Small sample size.
Just in
the 3 preseason games.
From the three-point
line. Yeah.
Dang, Huerter's put up 16 in 3 games.
Yeah. He was 1 for 5 on Sunday.
Jeez.
And Duarte was 1 for 1.
Yeah.
And I think he was 2 for 2 in Anaheim.
Yeah, because he went 6 for 6 or something.
Yeah,
4 for 4.
And yeah, I don't know. Duarte has really made that interesting. And Mike Brown said I think on Saturday, he said, I'll consider anything when it comes to lineups and rotations and stuff. And Chris Duarte has certainly given him a lot to consider.
Yeah.
So
I don't see it happening like game one. Huerter was a big part of this team last year. Their success, even though, really outside of the first couple months and after the All-Star break, he was, streaky from three. He still found ways to contribute passing and scoring, inside the 3-point line. But, his defense, it wasn't the best last year either, at least on ball. So, like I said, I think Huerter, I really don't see Huerter not starting opening day.
Yeah.
Or even like the first 5 games.
But Brown said he's going to give the same starting 5 the first shot, so I would think he'd be a man of the
yeah. So Duarte, I don't know. I could see him, I don't know. It'd be hard not to start Huerter. He's 4th highest paid guy we were talking about. Like, if you take him out, I don't really want him coming off the bench.
Yeah.
Because then he would be backing up Barnes at that point. Because you Malik Monk's your 6th man for the shooting guard. So, I don't know. I'd be nervous. I'd rather have Duarte come off the bench and back up Barnes.
I think Duarte is a little better at self-creation than Huerter. Because I think Huerter tried to create a few shots for himself. I think he got to a spot, hit a mid-range, but there were a couple times where he tried to get in that float game without using the 2-man game with Sabonis, which is another argument that you could make for why Huerter should start. He really depends. When he wasn't shooting the 3, the reason he kept scoring 12, 13, 14 points a game was the 2-man game. Getting to the line, getting layups, and whatnot. You saw his facilitation. He'd get like 3 or 4 assists at a few games in February and March.
He'd get like 7, 8 sometimes too.
Yeah, and obviously Duarte is going to... we haven't even seen the full effects of it. I think they're still working back into the 2-man game, him and Domas. But in terms of self-creation, coming off the bench and finding a way to get in there, I think Duarte's better suited to come off the bench. I think that could mean that Duarte plays more minutes than him. But
it could. And Duarte has a rapport with Sabonis. They were in Indiana together before Sabonis got traded over to Sac. So, I think he shot pretty well off the Sabonis passes. I think it was like 40% from 3 or so.
Yeah.
So he has a connection with Sabonis as well, which is important to know. We're talking about Huerter being so good at the DHO game with him, but Duarte doesn't seem far behind. Again, it's been 1.5 years since that happened. But
true. They only played a half season together.
Yeah, exactly. That's true too. Not very long.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm excited for Duarte. I thought it was such a nice little pickup. He had that bad game against the Raptors, but
I had neglected to mention it when we were talking about it after that Raptors game. But he hadn't played basketball, like live basketball, in over 200 days.
That's true.
So it's like you're coming up on like 2/3 of a year, basically.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I should have given him a little more credit. Obviously, he worked his way back, but
I'm excited over him.
Yeah,
because that's a bonus trade. He's like, Duarte's off limits, and we get him for a 2nd rounder.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's not quite like getting Kessler Edwards for David Michino, but
David Michino, the legend.
But yeah, the one thing is like if Huerter, again, it's just like Duarte. You can make the argument Duarte is the better 2-way player. He is the better 2-way player. He's a better defender. You can make the argument that he should play more minutes than Huerter maybe, but it's like I feel like once you put Huerter on the bench, now like what's your use for him? Because they've been playing Lyles and Vezenkov they've been playing the 4 and the 3 a little bit. Obviously Lyles plays the 5 as well, but they've been guarding small forwards a little bit. The versatility is there, and it's just like Huerter guarding bigger forwards or wings, I guess. We're talking about him being a bad on-ball defender because he's not physical enough. He's not going to be physical enough to guard, those guys. You're putting him in a position where now I would make the argument where if you have him coming off the bench, he's the 10th guy. He's not the 9th or 8th guy.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And it's just like 4th highest paid player. If you get into a situation like that, you might see Kevin Huerter get moved because people are going to want that shooting, obviously. And if they're going to start him and make him a central part of the offense, then that's the way that's going to be. I think the Kings have to keep that in mind, and they know that. And at the end of the day, like I said, Duarte is more adaptable. I think he would do better off the bench. He could play more minutes off the bench, but I think...
And he just doesn't have that role. Like Huerter, imagine taking Huerter, you're starting shooting guard all year, and putting him to the bench.
Yeah.
It'd almost be like Holmesing that guy.
Yeah, a little bit.
It'd just be like, he'd probably just not want to be there.
It's almost worse because Holmes didn't really make an effort to adjust his style of play to fit.
Yeah.
You saw Chimezie Metu and Alex Len kind of try.
Yeah.
And Holmes was just kind of complacent.
Yeah.
And seemed content with just not having a
just
role.
making $11 million a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's what would happen to Huerter. He'd be like, all right, well.
Yeah. I mean, I think he has a better attitude about it. Like, asked how Huerter took it. Huerter took it well. And Mike Brown was making it clear that it's not just a message to Huerter that he's got to be better. He's saying that there's a lot of guys that need to play more physical, get up into the ball, fight through screens and all that stuff. It's more of a challenge at large. But, I mean, if Huerter doesn't get better there, then, again, Duarte's putting him in a position. But, you know, after Sunday's game, he said Huerter, you know, was better at defending. And maybe he was. I don't know if that really stood out after watching it once. But it's like, of all the possibilities of Huerter losing the starting job to Duarte or whatever, I mean, equal possibility is that Huerter makes enough strides to preserve it. And I think with that challenge, with the kind of attitude that Huerter has, which is better than other past guys that maybe have lost jobs under Mike Brown or under this team, I guess, in the recent past, I wouldn't be surprised if he comes out and, I mean, he's not going to put himself in a position where he's going to be better than Duarte on defense, but he, you know, with his shooting, which he's arguably the best shooter on the team, it's either, I mean, Keegan Murray, I think, in my opinion, is better.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
But it's like one of the greatest shooters in the league, easily, 3-point contestant, you know? If he just improves it enough, if he gets a baseline where he's a little more average there, you know, it can happen. So it's just interesting to see. It's a lot to talk about with that. It's not something I anticipated. Like when Brown said that in the first week of training camp, where he's like, "I'll make a hard decision if I have to." I was like, "Huh, that's weird."
Yeah.
I would never have thought of changing the starting lineup. One of the most efficient starting lineups, the lineup that played the most together in the whole league. Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see.
Yeah, and you know, who knows what's going to happen. I mean, the Kings were very fortunate last year not catching any injuries, but I mean, Huerter or Barnes, who were pretty healthy last year. I don't know, I'm trying to think of how many games Huerter missed.
I think, well, he had like that knee injury.
Yeah.
I think he played like 76 or 77
Yeah,
games.
he played a lot. So it's like...
And talking about injuries, the guy that's injury prone is Chris Duarte. He played 45 games last season. So it's just like, even if Huerter loses a starting job, I mean, he's probably going to start more often than not.
Yeah. I don't know. I just can't imagine Huerter off the bench.
Yeah. I think...
Unless he's really, really bad.
If he doesn't get better, I think if you get 5 games into the season, it's just like, or maybe 10 games. Because they play the 5-game segments that they like to focus on. I wouldn't be surprised if after 10 or 15 games maybe they make a change. But he'd have to make no improvements. And I don't see that happening. I think he will make improvements.
Yeah.
And I think if he continues to improve... Mike Brown always said, you know, Fox and Sabonis are my guys, but Monk and Huerter are kind of my second tier. I don't worry about them so much as long as they're putting in the work. If Huerter continues to put in the work, he probably won't lose it outright. He'll make it interesting if he doesn't get better, but I can't imagine Huerter just giving up.
Yeah.
You know?